everyone. Can you hear me? No? Okay, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. The board has already met in executive session. We're going to start with the saluting flag. I'd just like to draw your attention to the statement of public notice in your agenda. There are 2 times for public comment. The first one is on agenda items, so you can come and speak on anything that's on the agenda. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. And the second public comment is for any item that you'd like to speak about, and that's later in the meeting. If you come up for public comment, please sign in on the clipboard and tell us your name and address when you come up to the microphone. Just so you all know, this meeting is being recorded, and you can read the rest of the statement of public notice at your leisure while you're here. Okay, so now we are, okay, we have to do the roll call.
Mr. Burr? Here. Mrs. Warner?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Sen? Here. Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. Corn?
Here.
Mrs. Woolard?
Here.
Mr. Mark Karen?
Here.
Mr. Stein?
Here.
Mrs. McHugh?
Here.
Madam President?
So obviously this is the first Board of Education meeting that we've had since the tragedy in Florida. So before we get started with our business items, I would just like us to all take a moment of silence and to have in our thoughts the lives that were lost and the families that are in mourning. Thank you.
We're up to the student representative.
Hi, everybody. As Mr. Markarian just said, this is the first meeting that we've had since the tragedy that had happened in Florida, and I wanted to kind of share the students' viewpoint on it a little bit. And I think the overall view from great students is that we are safe in our school. And I know that there are some more measures that will be taken to ensure our safety. But even with the safety, many students believe that it's important to make a difference in the entire community. And one big idea that many students have is to participate in the nationwide walkout that is going to happen on March 13th for 17 minutes. And so this is a nationwide walkout with the idea behind it to kind of send a message to Congress that something needs to happen. And this is from the students who are doing this, and I think that everyone believes that this will have a big impact on everyone in Ridge, really, or many people in Ridge, and many students want to make a difference. And this is different than many other protests in the idea that it's not politically motivated, but more just a message, trying to send a message to Congress that something needs to happen. And already many students want to participate in this. And I think as long as it's properly run and it only lasts for 17 minutes and won't really disrupt much of school day, that it will be a very well-run opportunity for students. And kind of on that note, Ridge Hockey had their won the county championship last week. Everyone's really happy for that, and they have their second state game tonight, which everyone's hoping that they'll win so that they continue further on. And all the other winter sports are either ending or they're still in the playoffs, so everyone's just really excited cheering them on and hoping that somebody wins the championship and somebody keeps going. And as we move closer to March 14th, I know that we'll know more about and really how much the student population wants to participate in it, but right now it's kind of just a little getting worse, but it's gaining steam as
superintendent's report. There's one item on your superintendent's report, it's the receipt of the HIP report. So I'd like to take a motion to approve that. Second, Mrs. Milovich. We'll take a roll call on that.
Mr. Burr? Yes. Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Stein?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolbert?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. Mr. Markarian, I would like to say a few words at this point.
Thank you, Mrs. McKeon. So, obviously, every school district, I think, in the nation is reflecting on the tragedy in Florida. I know I've tried to communicate with parents a little bit on the subject of school security in my last couple of messages through the Aspen notification system, the email system that I've been using to try to get some information to parents. I hope that's been effective. I know that a lot of questions have come in from many folks interested in the subject of school security. Certainly, I've done some information work in trying to respond to some of those things. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the general issues with regard to school security. I know in my last message that I sent to the families, I kind of used a sentence that might have been a little bit confusing, talking about school security in not trying to undermine its purpose by having too much or oversharing of information. One of the things that school districts have to try to have some protection over are the details of daily routines and processes and procedures that we use to work with students and faculty and the police department as we try to practice procedures to keep students safe. So I'm not trying to frustrate anyone who may have asked for particular information. I'm not trying to frustrate anybody by not having school security plans, for example, put on the website. I'm not trying to frustrate people by not having maps of the school layout posted on the school district website, or the time of day, the moment that doors are locked in the morning, things like that. I don't think that really helps the security of the schools, and I just want you to be thoughtful about that in your own conversation, in your own dialogue that you might be having. There are many of us that do have pretty intimate knowledge of what the schools do in terms of safety procedures or security drills. Many of us have fairly intimate knowledge of the daily routines of the schools. Maybe even staff members who have concerns about certain areas that they consider vulnerabilities. Obviously, any school district, any institution can always tighten up procedures and try to make things more secure. My caution to all of us would just be to keep in mind that we never know when somebody might be out there looking for information to do wrong with. And if we're on social media, if we are putting things out on the internet or the World Wide Web that might be information that is not generally known or available, and we start putting it out there, we may be doing more harm than good. So I would just ask you to be thoughtful about that in what you do and say online, and also what you do and say right here in this meeting. These meetings are recorded. They are public meetings, and they're created as YouTube videos, as you may know. Being bored on a Saturday night, you probably go online and download these YouTube videos and watch all the meetings that you can't attend. So, as silly as that might sound, our meetings are recorded. If you look in the back, you'll see there's a little camera rolling, and public comment is recorded, our presentations are recorded, So generally speaking, when it comes to school security, we're just not in the business of advertising all of the details. So I would ask you to be thoughtful about that, and know that there are ample opportunities for you to communicate your concerns, not only to the Board of Ed, but also to school administrators, to myself, via email or phone call. But I just caution us to be mindful of the things that are easily accessible because of the lovely technologies that we have available to us these days. So I just would ask you to be thoughtful about that. With that said, I do want to reassure you as a community that obviously nothing productive can happen when people are worried about their safety and security. So we know that for us to get the good business of educating the students done well, we need to make sure that they feel safe and secure and that they are safe and secure. So that has to come first. That's kind of school administration 101. You have to take care of the basic needs of feeling safe and secure. That has to be handled first. And then you can get on to the business of trying to educate the students. So it is a top priority for us, and we put a lot of energy into it. Not only do we want to put energy into it, but we're required to put energy into it. We work with local law enforcement to do a host of drills on an annual basis that the staff and the students are involved in. We work with the police to do many of those drills. We invite people in to come and evaluate those drills. We do tabletop discussions about various scenarios that could happen and how we would respond to those drills. We have school security and crisis manuals for all the schools. On a larger level, we have an annual law enforcement conference that we do with the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office. We do that every year, typically at Raritan Valley Community College. On a county level in Somerset County, we also meet as a group of superintendents with the county prosecutor and many of the law enforcement representatives for every school on about a quarterly basis. In fact, we're having a meeting this coming Friday with the county prosecutor, that group of law enforcement specialists that work in our schools, and many of the superintendents will be in attendance, and we reflect on not only our regular day-to-day practices, but when something tragic happens. Because anytime something goes wrong, it provides an opportunity for all of us to reflect about how we can try to make sure that something like that doesn't happen here. And I think that that's something that we're all really looking forward to this Friday when we get that meeting going. We also have, on the local level, we conduct our district crisis teams meetings as well as individual school crisis team meetings. So, you know, we are very attuned to that key component of school safety. Our work on a local level is also very much connected to our first responders, and so we are very, very grateful to the law enforcement that we have in Basking Ridge. I'm talking to them on almost a daily basis, if not more than once a day, just to stay in tune with what may or may not be going on, and working together to make sure that we can have the safest environment we can for our students. And in fact, tonight, because I wanted to make sure that you knew I was serious about that, was I asked our acting chief, Mike Shinsky, to stop by the meeting tonight. I know that he can't stay late, but I did ask him to come by and just share a couple words with you by way of introduction, if you haven't seen or met acting Chief Shinsky before. He's over there shaking the hand of our Cedar Hill School Principal, Mr. Sampola. But I did ask the chief to come by and just share a few words about what's going on with the department in his vision and the vision of the Burns Township Police in supporting the schools. So, Mr. Shinsky, Chief, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a few words, that microphone should be on. If there's not a little green light on it, Dr. Heineman will check it for you.
as Superintendent Mark Aaron said, I'm Mike Shimsky. I'm the acting police chief here in Burnaby Township, and I want to thank you for asking me to come to the meeting tonight. And I just want to address the group and kind of let you know where we are in law enforcement as it pertains to school safety. You should know that the safety of our school and the students and the staff in our school is one of our highest priorities. We have a number of strategies in place that we employ every day. We communicate with the school and the school staff every day. We have staff in the school, embedded in the schools. I talk to the superintendent, actually more than I talk to my wife. People are starting to talk now. We talk on a daily basis about things that are going on. And I just want to assure everybody that school safety is one of our paramount responsibilities, and we take it very seriously. There's a lot of things that we do in the police department to prepare ourselves for a crisis. When it comes to law enforcement, we talk about high probability, low risk, low probability, high risk. We spend a lot of time and money preparing ourselves for things that are hopefully never going to happen. And a response to a school situation is one of those things that we put a lot of effort into. And we've been ramping that up since before the tragedy in Florida a couple weeks ago. It's the focus of this department. We're moving in a direction where we recognize that there's constant threats in life, and we need to be able to address them. That being said, people shouldn't leave this meeting tonight thinking that this school is in any higher risk than any other school in America. If you go to any of the seminars and you talk to any of the experts, you talk to parents who have had kids that have been involved in situations where they've lost their life, it's a very low probability. It's very low probability. The probability of it happening is very low. Okay, so you should know that going out. That being said, it's something that we need to be prepared for. There's strategies that we're working on with the school and in the police department. Basically different two prongs. There's a fine line between what the school can do and what the police can do. So when you put police in the school or you involve the police department with the school, there has to be a real clear line of communications between law enforcement and the school, because the school can do things that the police can't do. And the police can do things that the school can't do. So what we want to do is kind of look at early warning. We want to be able to identify high risk, things that raise flags, and then we want to be able to address that. And if, God forbid, the day were to come where we had to react, we want to be prepared 100% to react. There's some things that we're working on right now that I can talk to you about. There's other things that I'm not going to talk about to the public because we're not going to reveal strategies about how we might deal with certain things in an open meeting. As far as law enforcement response, if we're talking about the incident that happened in Florida, not knowing any of the facts, like most of you, I know what I read in the newspaper as far as the police response and the alleged lack of police response to that incident. I can assure you that that would not happen here. And the reason I can tell you that is because I have 3 children in the school district. And I know our officers, and I know the commitment and the dedication, and I know we train to do. And if the day were to come where we had to put that into action, I assure you that the action would be swift. But that's, we're obviously looking to identify ways not to get to that point. And the clear communication we have with our school, the superintendent, and by the way, we have a great relationship with the Board of Education and the staff in the schools. As you know, we have 2 school resource officers embedded in the schools. We're talking about strategies to maybe increase the presence in the schools. You're probably seeing an increased presence at the schools now during the high traffic times. We have some random things that we have built in to demonstrate to the staff and the students and the public and the parents that we're taking this seriously and that we have a high presence, high visibility, even when you might not see us there. So I just want to assure you all of that and thank Nick and the Board of Ed for the great relationship that we do have and the ability that we have to communicate pretty much about everything. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Acting Chief Shimsky.
I'm trying.
We appreciate your visit this evening, and I wanted to take the opportunity also, while we're on the subject, to try to address at least broadly some of the different things that have kind of come my way over the last week and a half regarding questions about certain elements of school security. And a lot of those questions have to do with facilities and how we handle hardening of our target, if you will, and trying to be in a position where we do not appear to be an attractive a target. And, you know, it's difficult to speak to every one of those things, but I want to assure you that we certainly are looking at that issue on a regular basis. Broadly speaking, the building envelope, entry procedures, exit procedures, you know, we are also looking at the issue of communication. I know that question has come up in the past at Board of Ed meetings in terms of classroom communication, the ability to communicate from classrooms. So those are fundamental things that we are working on. You know, security cameras, budgeting for the maintenance and replacement of security cameras. These are things that are part of the school budget. There are ongoing funds dedicated on an annual basis to constantly make improvements to our facilities in the name of security. And that's a challenging issue because, as with anything else, there's never an end to it. If you think about your own home and the visions for home improvement, I think you can imagine that the same is true here if you want to have a grand vision of school security. There's never a time where you couldn't have spent more money. So, you know, obviously in working on a school budget, you want to dedicate what you can, but have in mind everything that you need to try to accomplish. So we are investing in this school district's security. We do invest in the facilities, and we are working closely with the police to try to make sure that we can maintain the safest environment that we can here for our students and our staff and our visitors that may be in the buildings. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to try to at least speak generally to the public in this area, because I have gotten a lot of communication, not surprisingly, on the subject, and certainly it's not something that ever goes away. We are constantly working on this. Our meeting structure, our practice schedule, the opportunity to reflect and improve, you know, to have drills run in our buildings. We have officers coming to our buildings to do drills when they're unoccupied. So it is an area of constant work. And we're committed to it because it is the first priority. Nothing else happens if the students aren't safe. So I appreciate your attention on the subject, and I thank our acting Chief Shimsky for being here tonight. I think I saw at least one of the SROs also here this evening. We have two that work in the district on a full-time basis, and I want to thank both of them, Tracy Baldessari and John Neiman, two of the officers that are really dedicated within the school system as our SROs. These are people that, you know, I'm on the phone with late at night, early in the morning, just trying to work on problem solving and making sure that we're taking care of the kids. So I want to thank them and the whole police department because, you know, whether it's Mr. Shimsky or Officer Neiman or Officer Baldessari, the whole department is extremely responsive to the needs of the school district, and they are always right there whenever anyone reaches out, whether it's myself or any one of the administrative team or teachers. These guys are there for us. You know, these men and women are committing their lives to taking care of us, and I really appreciate the work that you guys do, and I thank you for stopping by tonight to talk to us a little bit about it, so thank you.
I'd also like to reiterate thank you to the police department
if I could just add one other thing too, because I know that, as I mentioned in one of my recent messages, you know, we all want to try to help wherever we can. And so if you missed the message that I tried to put out there this past Friday, one of the ways that you can help is really just trying to be aware yourselves, situationally aware. You know, the old adage, see something, say something, really goes a long way. And I just want you to know that we listen, and not only to the parents, but also to the students. This is a message that we preach to the kids, and one that you can reinforce with your kids at home, because oftentimes kids are, you know, they're on the ground level. You know, they're hearing things, they're seeing things, they're knowing things quite often first, before anybody else. And I thank you, and I thank your children, because I will tell you that they do come to us. They do come to trusted adults in the building. Sometimes they come to you, and then you come to us. And that's a very powerful thing, and it has helped a lot in many situations. You know, regardless of active shooter types of situations, you know, we have lots of things that go on in school districts where people need help sometimes. And, you know, reaching out for help isn't always the easiest thing to do, and it isn't always necessarily the thing that the person that has the need is even thinking about doing. But their friends recognize it, their parents recognize it, and so I just want to thank the community and our students for really actually being very good about that, and to commend you and ask you to keep doing it, and to keep talking to kids about things. You know, we've actually seen more and more of it the last couple of years. I think that has a lot to do with the district's goal about ad hoc social emotional learning, committee work, the committee work that we're doing at the district level, and the outreach that we're trying to have with parents. I think that message is getting out more and more and more with staff, with students, with parents, that you know, sometimes you need help and it's okay to ask for help. You know, we want you to ask for help. We'd rather be able to try to help people get to the resources they need than not. That's a really important component of trying to keep students safe, is getting them extra resources if they need it. So I want to thank you for that. I hope you saw that message. And really, it's a testament to the kids and the families how many times we actually do get phone calls, emails, or in-person communication saying, you know what, I think we have somebody here that might need some help. And it really is extremely helpful, so I thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Marcari. Yeah, we're all here for the same reason, for the kids, and I think, you know, with positive communication, we can make improvements. I think what Mr. Marcari just said is very important, that people need to communicate with their children, communicate with the schools, and I think that will go a long way in helping with this whole issue. So at this time, we're up to public comment on agenda items. So if you weren't here at the beginning, I mentioned there were 2 public comments, one for agenda items that are on the agenda or who were spoken about tonight, or at the end of the meeting, there's public comment on other items. If you come up, there's a clipboard here, you can sign your name and tell us your name and address. When you come up, please. Thank you.
Good evening. James Vopel, 20 Evergreen Place. Just want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Marcari and appreciate the comments that he made with respect to school security. And I will be expressing my thoughts and concerns with you via email and not during this public forum. Because being a public school teacher for 25 years, I have my ideas on how schools can be safe or should be could be made safer. With that said, you know, we'll never know if there was increased intervention, that the 17 people wouldn't have died last week. It was an unfortunate incident, and schools cannot be totally safe. Okay, I'm just going to be very blunt with you as an educator. We will never, ever be able to find a foolproof way that people cannot get into a school or cannot attack children. Okay, bulletproof glass, closing off exits, funneling people out of one exit or entrance. It's not going to matter. If somebody wants to off somebody, unfortunately in this day and age, they will have the capability to do it. Before school, after school, during school, it's not going to matter. Our job is to take as many precautions as we can in order to keep our kids as safe as humanly possible, and we as educators need to do the same with the children that we service. That said, I want to tie this into prevention. And if you take a look at the survey that was gone over at the last board meeting, there was a very alarming statistic, and that was that 5 students at Oak Street, I'm just looking at the Oak Street slide, 5 students from Oak Street were seen by a counselor for either suicide, intervention, or prevention. And that went up from just 1 the year before. Okay, that is alarming. And yes, it's all nice that we got an extra SAC for the district in the upper grades. But I think where real discussion needs to take place is that we need to have an increased presence of school counselors in the elementary buildings. Because that's where all of these problems begin. And if we can intervene with those students at such a young, impressionable age, then we may not have the problems that we have later on, the suicides, the school shootings. Because we always react to what happens. We've reacted to things that have happened in this district. Let's try to be proactive. Let's engage in that discussion, have that conversation. And I think it's a serious conversation that needs to be had, that we need more counselors in the elementary schools. The fact that we have, and I got the numbers today, as of February 1st, 2018, we have 2,223 students enrolled in all 4 elementary schools. And we have 1 counselor in each building. So you're talking about 1 person trying to counsel roughly close to 580 to 590 students. Okay, that's near impossible. Okay, I've spoken to the counselor I work with, okay, and we have 650 in my building. And she's the only counselor in the building. And she says she doesn't get to counsel anymore because she has to deal with the other things, with bullying and everything else that goes on within schools. She doesn't get to counsel and see the kids who are in trouble, who are in need, who she doesn't get to reach out to families as much as she would like to. So this is a real problem at the elementary level. And we need more intervention, more people to help with the families that are in crisis, help with the students that are in crisis, so that they get the help they need and that we can prevent a lot of the things that are happening, or at least make an attempt to prevent what's been happening. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Salco from 5 Kinker Court. I want to thank you for the time and dedication you give to our learners. And about 2 years ago, in May of 2016, I shared with you my concerns for the safety of the students and staff at Cedar Hill School due to an outdated classroom phone system that restricts communication within the school and outside of the school. I'm kind of nervous to continue reading my letter because I don't know what you want me to keep saying or when you want me to be quiet. But I feel that if I'm quiet and I push back from this, I've been asking and writing letters for 2 years, and that quiet didn't help our students or didn't help our school to get any safer for 2 years. So I'm asking you to please look at the facilities that you have our students in. Make sure that they are fair. Make sure that they are equal. Make sure that teachers can call 911 if they need to in a classroom. Make sure that they can do this. Because right now in Cedar Hill, they can't. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the staff, it's not fair to the students. If the high school can do it and the middle school can do it, then let our elementary schools do it. I can't believe I'm up here requesting this and asking for this. I've worked in schools, I have friends that are administrators in schools and educators, and when I tell them that I'm coming to a board meeting to request updated phones that aren't from 1960, I'm embarrassed. Please, for our kids, do this. I don't want to beg for this anymore. I want everyone to be safe, and I don't know if it's an upgrade that we can't do because there might be asbestos in the building. I don't know what it is. But this is something we've clearly saved a lot of money on updating over the years, so this upgrade would be great if we could just do it for our learners and do it for our community and to keep these children safe. If you haven't seen what a phone looks like in Cedar Hill, here's one. I'm more than happy to pass it around. No numbers on it. It just connects to the secretary. This is what we're giving our students. And as a parent, as a former educator, this is something I relied on. I needed to call the nurse a lot to help with students. I needed to call the teachers. I needed to call parents to check in with them, to give them a report on their students, on their behavior. I needed to call my grade partner and say, hey, I ran out of worksheets. Can you get me a few extra ones to my classroom? I mean, we're not giving our teachers the basic things just to do their job, let alone if there's an emergency. So please, help our students, help our teachers, let them work, let them be able to call the counselor and say, hey, I need your help. I have a student who I think might need some help. Instead of them having to pull out their cell phone, find the counselor's number, text her, wait for a reply, maybe send an email. This is something that they should have. I shouldn't be begging for this. I started begging for this 2 years ago. Before that, I begged for a safer entrance at Cedar Hill. I'm tired of begging. These are things that should be commonplace. This is Bernards Township. When people ask me about our schools, I say, well, I don't know if I could recommend the schools for safety reasons. You know, I love the teachers, I love the staff, but knowing every day that this is what I'm sending my child in with, it's fearful. So I'm just asking you, please, bump it up on the facilities list. I don't know what more to say, but I want everyone in that school to be safe. Whether it's a visitor, a parent, a teacher, children, do it for the kids. Do it for them. And I think that's it. I kind of went off my letter. And please, students in all schools should have the same resources. Let it be consistent. You know, if there's cameras at the high school, the cameras outside at Cedar Hill. Everyone needs the same resources. And when you're looking at your security and you're talking with Bernards Township Police Department, look at all of those things. Make a checklist. Do they all have this? Because all these kids are precious. So please, help us out with that, or help me out with that. Thank you.
Good evening. Rick Ricarda, 58 Independence. I want to thank you for having this talk today, and also Mr. Markarian for sending out all of the emails that are rather helpful, and nice to know that you're thinking about the community and you're thinking about the issues that we all are discussing amongst ourselves for the safety of our children. I was at a PAC meeting at Mount Prospect on last Thursday, and our principal, who I absolutely adore, was explaining some of the safety precautions about how they close the doors. So I'd like you to take a look at not just the other schools in town, but also Mount Prospect, as to why the doors, they used to have these magnetic strips that once, I don't really know.
Yeah, if I may, Nancy, I'm not instructing you not to talk generally about the subject, but one thing that we've heard, as we've discussed this tonight, we've heard it from the police chief as well, is that we're trying not to discuss very specific details about security issues and things that might be vulnerabilities, because it's public and it's going to be on video, and so to the extent you may be going into talking about specific vulnerabilities that you may perceive with respect to doors and things, if anything you say will then be public, so we're trying to avoid that. I
No, fair enough. Totally understood. I will be happy to put that in an email, my concerns, but it does relate to teacher and children and faculty safety because of some of the things that I did notice. But on that note, then thank you.
Will it be addressed publicly now?
You know, one of the things I just want to add is the Open Public Meetings Act is a state law that governs how the board interacts with the public in meetings and what can be said, the fact that there should be public comment, and what things can be discussed in private by the board in closed session. And the issue of tactics, techniques, and things related to security, safety of the students are specifically exempt in the Open Public Meetings Act from public discussion. It's something that can be discussed in closed session. And again, we're not saying that general discussions about the issue. Obviously, this is an extremely important issue to everybody. It's the highest priority for the school district. It's the highest priority for the police department. So the district attempted to address this head-on tonight by having a lot of statements at the beginning, by having the police chief here. So certainly, the school district is giving this its utmost attention. It's something that's always being reviewed and considered, and things are being done with respect to this. But with respect to specific strategies and techniques, with respect to specific items, with how doors are handled and how things are handled, those will probably not be discussed publicly because doing so could compromise the safety and security of the schools, the staff, and most importantly, the students. So in that sense, you know, again, we're not telling everyone not to share their general concerns, but if there's specific issues where you feel there might be vulnerabilities, I'm suggesting that it would be better to notify the administration, either at the building level or the superintendent through email or letter or through some other way so that it can be considered confidential.
Good evening. I'm Eric Russell from 134 Smithfield Court. I have been a New York City teacher at the high school level in math. And right now, among other things, I moderate a group of New York State retirees, all of whom are former educators. And the group is, you know, on both sides about the question of arming teachers. Now, the one thing that I do know, and I discussed it briefly with the chief, is number one, the largest side effect in active shooter situations among the people who respond, especially if they shoot somebody, is PTSD. Do you want to lose a teacher? The other thing is, most of the bullets that are fired, even by trained officers, and most notoriously by New York City, miss. Quite possibly bystanders will be hit. This is not a good result. You know, I'd say leave it to the professionals. They have developed plans for it. This is the way it should be handled. Do not bring extra guns into the schools. When I was in high school back in the 60s, we never heard of this sort of thing. The NRA was a group of people who were interested in education and safety. Now they're selling, get more guns into everything. That's not the answer. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Danielle Kahn. I'm at 62 Blackburn Road. I had zero intention of speaking tonight, but there is a concern along safety that I've been noticing more recently, and it's the class size. When my children started Cedar Hill as kindergartners, there were 73 kindergartners in their grade. We're now at 106, with new children arriving weekly, especially in the 4th grade. Every one of the classes have received new students. I believe in advance over the summer, we had an indication that new students were going to be enrolling at various times. And at this point, we have 26, 27 students per class, in addition to classroom aides, as well as push-ins that come in from various groups during the day. And as far as safety goes, I worry even about fire. I was in both of my children's classes for Valentine's Day. And these poor teachers have no place to put these desks. They're putting them in, they typically do group settings, where they might have 4 to 6 desks in a box. And the students have their stuff. I mean, they've got backpacks sometimes underneath, they have coats on the backs of chairs, they have big binders. I mean, 4th grade, these binders are gigantic, they're sticking them under their seats. Some of the chairs have ample room under there, but others don't, and they're on the sides, and you have, now we're trying to introduce movement, which I think is great during the classroom, but the size is becoming an issue. And I know that the demographers are saying Burmese Township is going down in size, we're going down in students. Well, I have to tell you, in Cedar Hill, we're not seeing that. There are a lot of students coming in, and if you have a house that's being sold that might be a 2-bedroom ranch, within weeks, I mean, even on Cross Road, you're seeing a 4 to 5-bedroom house that's being built, and guess what? They've got kids. And they don't sometimes have 1 or 2, they're coming in 4 or 5 kids. So I just ask you to take a look at this, because I know that I've worked very closely with Mr. Simpola over the last couple of years, and I know that he's aware of the increase in students, and especially in this grade, and he's pushing for another class for next year. But I have to say that this has been a struggling year for these amount of students to be in one classroom. And it's not just this classroom. I think we're seeing it across the board. And I urge you to continue to take a look at it and really look at the students that are coming in and the families that are coming in. And even if they're enrolling 1 child, take a look at how many are in the family, because I don't see the trend going downward. And I worried about the safety just in this Valentine's Day party that was supposed to be great. I looked at the amount of people and bodies that were in this classroom, and it just seems a little unfair. So I just wanted to put that out there as far as safety goes, not only for the issue of a potential intruder, but also just for the safety issue of people tripping, as well as, God forbid, a fire, in the schools. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, Laura Begg, 15 Pitney Court. So I actually thought there were going to be a lot more speakers this evening. I didn't even think I'd have to come up, and I can keep my comments very brief. But I just wanted to first make a comment, and that is that I think most of the parents here tonight, I know I can speak for myself and perhaps a few others that couldn't be here tonight, are obviously very concerned about the safety measures at the school. And some of us have written to you or called or maybe even expressed some concerns on social media, which I'm sure you're aware of, regarding what those safety measures are. And I just want to clarify, that's not to say that we're interested in having you broadcast those safety measures over social media or even replying in this forum or in any other public forum. I think we realize that that wouldn't be prudent. But the important thing for us is to know that those safety measures exist and that they're continuing to be audited in an ongoing way, very aggressively at this point, and that you do communicate to the community what those measures are in some fashion, just so that we can be reassured by you that our students are being, well attended, and that our teachers and administrators are also being protected to the best extent that we can. So I think communication is an important and critical tool at this particular juncture. I know that sometimes our concerns are shared with you in emails, and frequently those emails receive an automated response, which doesn't give us enough satisfaction that you're behind those emails working to the best extent you can for us. So if there's a way for you to consider giving us a little bit more information about what's happening, understanding what the ongoing auditing is that you're doing of the safety procedures and the like, I think that would be helpful, and I think that the community would really appreciate that. And I just have a couple of questions then. I know we have a response, right now that we're formulating, and a lot of discussion is going on about new tactics and different ways that we could enhance our safety and security. But is there an ongoing procedure that you have for audits, for safety audits? I understand that right now there's a lot of attention, but in a few weeks the attention might be veered off into some other direction. And I would like to know if we have an ongoing procedure for auditing all of our school safety procedures. My second question is regarding our SROs. I'd like to know if there are SROs in every school and if those SROs are full-time. I also wanted to speak to the woman who mentioned Cedar Hill and really elementary schools in general. The other woman mentioned Mount Prospect. Newtown was an elementary school. And so while I think we think immediately about a high school shooting in Parkland and we think about our response at the high school level, I'd like to also comment that we need to have these procedures span all of our schools in the district, and I'd like to see that we have a comprehensive plan for looking at that. And then finally, I'd like to just mention that I think it's prudent for us to arm our teachers and faculty not with firearms, but with something much more important than that, and that is knowledge and understanding around students and families that are in crisis and in need, and to understand what it means to identify those students and families and how to respond to those students and families in an ongoing manner, but also one that's proactive. And so I would encourage this district to look as one of their response measures to safety and security at some additional and required mental health training for our teachers, our administrators, our student leaders, our coaches, and I would also like to make sure that our SROs, and I'm just about finished, thank you. I'd like to make sure that our SROs are also armed with that knowledge and that understanding of procedures and protocols for proactive measures. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Frank Zhao of the Elderly. First of all, I want to thank you for concern and address this school and student safety issues. With regard to something that we can do in general, I really appreciate you gentleman and the lady mentioned about the prevention. I think not only the safety and also students' general well-being is very important, and we're seeing that when students go have some kind of mental issues, pressures that has nowhere to kind of express or get out. The intent, sometimes kill them or have suicidal thoughts. Sometimes just let it out against someone else. So I guess this is very important. And also when you mentioned that see it, tell it, not only the teachers and student councils that are I think kind of a knowledge to the student, especially those students has start to understand the social impact. I think give them kind of proper, adequate kind of knowledge. Sometimes training is also important because, as you say, they are in the ground. And the second is there are a lot of kind of soft spots. School is been because it's relatively in a small kind of packed area, but there are a lot of other things like council events, sports event. Those are very kind of similar to this situation. So I want to see they're also being taken care of. The third is that at this time it's very encouraging that students is taking the lead in addressing the gun violence. For the March 14th kind of the general workout, the high school students are start to taking the lead role, and some parents are expressing the interest to participate. I want to know any kind of guidance, suggestions, or limitations for community members, especially parents, to be part of this workout. And also, is there any restrictions for, say, middle schoolers if they want to participate or organize such workout? Is there any suggestions? And finally, I personally against more guns in the school, but there could be exceptions. If there's in South, maybe people are more, more leaning towards having gun because they have more kind of the concealed weapons law, so it's more relaxed. So people are maybe accustomed to the environment. But talking about the New Jersey here, I don't think that we want more guns in the school. And since we have not only in the school environment, but also we see a kind of spark in mass shootings across the nation. I guess each citizen will have the kind of the responsibility to be part of a voice in the gun control. Maybe it's not immediate that can see the effect, but if we see the long run, I firmly believe we can make change. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. How are you? My name is Guriya Singh and I'm at 74 Hartley. I wanted to say really quickly that I appreciate the opportunity that you guys were addressing since this crisis has happened. And I think as parents, all of us are very worried about what our school is doing for us, or our town, rather. As parents, one of the things that we don't always get is the message. And I have full faith that you guys are doing whatever you can, but we don't have that transparency. So perhaps having a parent meeting at each school might be beneficial, where it's not being recorded, where parents can openly ask questions and receive answers and feel a little bit more reassured than we are right now. So thank you. That's it.
Hi, good evening. Rajkumar Ganeshan, 45 Hamilton Road. As a parent of a 7-year-old and 9-year-old, I don't know at home if I should be talking to them about guns and being and noticing things and coming and telling us, because kids play around all the time, and I don't know how much to take input from the kids and what's right, what's wrong, because they are young kids. So I wanted to see some kind of a communication from the board or something, how to address young kids. There may be active shooters drills in school, so they know and are aware about some things, but coming home and if they say something, what should I be bringing back to the school community, because it's not a clear line there. Because on the other hand, I'm also thinking about other kids. A small statement from a random kid could spoil the life of another kid, so I'm going to be careful to have a fine line there. So some kind of addressing the parents for how to address that particular situation would be a good guiding communication. If that can be sent out, that would be great. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, at this time I'm going to close this public comment.
So, sure, I can respond to a little bit of this. I think as far as March 14th is concerned, it sounds like the students will work that out with the building principals, and I'll talk to the building principals about working with them on that issue so that they can have a safe opportunity to properly express themselves. I like the suggestion about school-based meetings, and I'll talk to the principals. Maybe we can work that out at PTO meetings. We'll see if the PTOs and the principals want to get that on an agenda. Classroom communications, I mentioned earlier, we actually recently had a telecommunications expert visit each of the buildings, so we are taking a look at all the phone systems. How much and how far we can go with that remains to be seen, but we are working on it, and they were just in the schools in the last couple of weeks. Suggestion or question from a parent about reporting concerns. I understand, and it's a great question, and you know, that concern about impacting the life of some other child because of a report that gets made. I would say to that I would err on the side of caution. I think that our school counselors really do an excellent job in terms of making age-appropriate assessments and appropriate threat level assessments when it comes to things that young people sometimes say or do, and I would err on the side of talking to a counselor in that situation. Communication, I have been trying to communicate. I understand that more communication may be desired, and to the extent I think that I can do more, I will, and we'll see what we can do about some school-based communication. I do worry a little bit more about things that are published and easily passed on and published. So that's one concern that I have in that area for all the reasons that I talked about at the very beginning of the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your comments. It is helpful. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment, listening to everyone who came up. I think a lot of people mentioned prevention and different ways that we could address issues as early on as we can spot them with students. It has been a priority of our board and our administration. One of our district goals is social emotional learning, and so we've been doing a lot of talking and investing a lot of time in trying to address this issue. And as you know, if you came to our last meeting and heard the report from the guidance accounting department, this is a problem across the nation, and you know, K-12 education and higher education, there's more students struggling with mental health issues, anxiety, and other issues. And so it's kind of a crisis in our country right now that everybody's talking about. So it's going to obviously be an ongoing focus, and obviously, resources are somewhat scarce in terms of the ability to have as many professionals and help for everyone that we'd like to do it for. So it is a definitely a priority, and I think we've been talking about that a lot. So just wanted to say that. Okay, at this point in the agenda, we're up to approval of minutes. Somebody take a motion? Mrs. Gray, Mrs. Warner. Any other roll call, please?
Mr. Burr? Yes. Mrs. Warner?
I need to abstain from the board retreat, yes for the other two.
Mrs. Gray? Mr. Sam?
Abstain on the retreat, yes for the other two.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Woolridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
We're up to the Finance Committee report. We actually have items 1 through 22, but there's a addendum to number 5. There's an additional field trip on there. So make sure you check the page. I have a Finance Committee report, but we could go ahead. I guess I can just report out on the items that are on the agenda first, and we'll look on that, and then I'll do the rest of the committee report. So can someone make a motion for items 1 through 22? Mrs. Woolridge and Mrs. Gray. Okay, just a couple of notes about those items. A lot of the beginning ones are standard items. Number 4 is professional development. Number 5 is all field trips. Item number 6 is a generous donation from the Cedar Hill PTO for $3,500 for 10 standing desks. So we thank the Cedar Hill PTO for that generous contribution. Item 7 is a donation from the Burners PTC to support the summer fun program at Rams. So thank you to the PTC. And item 8 is a donation from Bruce and Kathy Finn of a saxophone. So thank you for that. And saxophones are very expensive instruments, by the way. A lot of instruments are really expensive. Item 9 is the disposal of used equipment and books, and the rest are services for specific students. Anyone have any questions about any before we vote on this? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Burr? Yes. Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Abstain on number 6, and yes to everything else.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Woolridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. So the Finance Committee met on Wednesday, February 21st. The first item that we talked about was the student stressor survey, kind of tied into some of the discussion we've been having. The survey was done in 2005 and 2012, and the survey was, we worked with the district worked with the health department, and they had a grant that paid for the survey. It was 2 times. They don't have the grant anymore, but we think it was a valuable survey that we should administer again. So we would propose that we move forward with that. The health department will still administer the survey with the help of Dr. Harlow, who also helped with the American Drug and Alcohol Survey. The survey will be given in the spring, sometime after AP tests probably. The survey will be for grades 6, 8, 10, 12. We also discussed adding some questions that were not on the survey in prior years because things have changed, as we all know, over the last number of years, and we want to make sure that we capture what's going on with the students currently. So the next item we discussed was the Ridge Drama Booster Club is interested in raising money for a fly system for the Ridge Pack that moves equipment and things around. We are going to do some more research on that in the district before we can consider it. There's a lot of questions that Finance Committee members had about that, so that will be discussed at a further date. We had a budget overview. Mr. McLaughlin kind of went over the same budget overview that we went over last month, which I reported out on, in terms of what our big categories of revenue and expenditures are. We have a balanced budget at this point with a 2% increase in our tax levy. We don't know, as Mr. McLaughlin reiterated with the Finance Committee, we don't know what's going to happen with our state aid yet. So we are budgeting conservative. We just don't know what's going to happen. The governor's message has been delayed until the 13th of March, so districts are not going to get their state aid numbers until probably the 16th of March. We don't know if the state is going to push back the date, which is usually would normally be March 20th for submission of our tentative budget to the county. The May 7th date for the public hearing on the budget should remain the same. So we'll keep everyone updated about that as we find out. We discussed some of the concerns about our state aid number and how the state calculates our state aid and what the state considers adequate funding for a district. Adequate funding category was based on the 2008 formula. So this formula doesn't take into account some of the expenses required for park and some of the technology things that are going on in districts today. And it also doesn't account for districts that have above average special education costs. So we don't know if the state is going to use the old formula to determine state aid or exactly how they're going to do it. So it's a big unknown, which makes it somewhat difficult to budget going forwards at this point. So hopefully we'll know more shortly on that. I'm trying to sum up this. We went over a list of some additions to this year's budget, as well as some items that could potentially get put back on the list if we get an increase in state aid, which we don't know yet. And some of the items that are in the budget are, right now that we're budgeting for, are some necessary improvements at Liberty Corner School, a new camera system and security project for the main entrance at Ridge High School. The budget also contains funding for Effective School Solutions, which is the program at Ridge High School that provides services for students who need counseling. That's a new program that was started last year. And so we want to keep that program going. We also have money in the budget to replace the Title I funds that were taken away that we had gotten from the state last year without much of an explanation. We lost them this year. So we want to keep using that money for our RTI, the Response to Intervention Program, which is identifying and targeting students at a very young age for interventions in reading specifically. And we feel that that program should have a lot of benefit for the students. So we do not want to, so we want to keep growing that program. The third kind of budget overview that we went over at the committee meeting was an attempt to look at what big items could potentially be in the budget over the next 3 fiscal years, or unknown things in the budget. So the first, of course, being state aid, which I already spoke about. We have some lease payments from the turf field and some technology that was purchased in 2016 for staff devices and classroom projection systems and whiteboards. So those lease payments will continue for several years. Other items were stuff having to do with hardware updates for doors, which has to do with safety and security. We also talked about the potential costs should go to a different schedule at the high school in terms of cafeteria, and also an increase in custodial or kitchen staff if we had unit lunch. So those are other factors that could come up. We also talked about there could be changes in our state aid. We could actually lose state aid if we have a reduction in enrollment, and then we don't know if there's going to be new construction that would potentially bring in new students. So that's another unknown in the budget. So that's kind of the budget overview. The committee also looked at some different estimates of costs of technology in terms of maintaining our technology that we have as our Chromebooks are entering the end of their life, according to Google. So we had looked at how technology would be budgeted over the next several years. The Finance Committee at the meeting discussed this and feels that because of all the unknowns in our budget that I just mentioned, that our our best option at this point is to kind of stay with the least expensive version that we looked at on our spreadsheet, which we're calling the status quo model, which is to kind of maintain the devices we have in terms of replacement as they age out and die, and then look into the most efficient use and allocation of devices. So we'll be having further discussion about that I think tonight at Board Forum. We also reviewed a request from WAMSAO to support them with $10,000 more, and currently give them some money to help with the administration costs of their organization. It's parent-run and parent-funded in general, but the Board of Education does give them a small amount, and they're requesting a little bit of an increase. And I already went over the agenda items, so we voted on them. Does anyone have any questions? Personnel, which has 28 items. Did someone make a motion? And Tim, Karen Richmond, sorry. I couldn't see whose hand was going up. Karen Richmond and Tim.
Okay, I think we'll vote on the items first. They're all pretty standard personnel items. Are there any questions before we vote? Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Burr? Yes. Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon? Yes. Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes on everything, but I'm abstaining from 21.
Mrs. Ford?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolbert?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met on February 16th, and one of the fun things that we did is we reviewed the Teachers of the Year and the Educational Support Professionals of the Year, who will be recognized at future Board of Ed meetings for the teachers and the educational support professionals. The time and method of recognition will be determined later this spring. We discussed the issue of the elementary teacher conferences. Concerns have been raised that the amount of time required for these conferences has become disruptive. So Mr. Syed suggested we talk to both teachers and principals to see if we can find a model that minimizes the time disruption. This item is going to be discussed at both the cabinet, which are the principals, and the elementary curriculum committee to consider the time of year, the length of the conference, and the number of days required to see if we can reduce the amount of time. And finally, if you note on item number 18 that we just approved, we have just hired a new Aspen system specialist who will be on board by the time we start scheduling season on April 1st. So that's a big one. And finally, ongoing items. As we do every month we meet, we are noting all of the additional staffing requests to be evaluated and prioritized come budget season. And finally, we met with our esteemed colleagues at the BTAA for negotiations last week, and the negotiations are going to continue at the beginning of March. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Swanger. We're up to the policy committee report. There is one item, which is the first readings in the policies. Someone can make a motion for item 1. Mrs. Warren and Mr. Salmon. Yeah.
Well, I read them all at the last meeting. I went through all these first meetings. And we didn't have a meeting this month, so there's no changes. Everything's the same as it was at last.
Great. Does anyone have any questions? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Burr? Yes. Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr.
to the curriculum committee.
The curriculum committee met on February 9th, so I'm going to report on that meeting. The first item was we had some follow-up questions on the K through 2 English Language Arts program evaluation, and there were 3. One had to do with the status of cursive instruction, and Mr. Hunter said that cursive is not currently part of the state standards and there's no requirement, but currently students do learn cursive in the 3rd grade in our district. The second one had to do with the end-of-year developmental reading assessment results, and particularly in grade 1, there was an increase in the number of students whose scores were below grade level, and Mr. Hunter said that no curricular changes were made and that all students were receiving the support that they needed. And then the third question was about a recommendation for a possible summer literacy program to help prevent the summer slide, which shows that about 20% of students in grades K through 2 experience a decrease in the reading level over the summer. So Dr. Heineman said that he was going to bring this item to the elementary curriculum committee. The second item was follow-up questions on the K through 5 mathematics program evaluation. And the first had to do with the GoMath program. And Ms. Bowman recommends that the district continue to use the program. The other was a question about the status of the math workshop model, which is the implementation is in progress. And some questions about the telescope math program. The K through 5, the next item was Kristen Fox, the social studies supervisor, did a presentation on the K through 5 social studies program evaluation. So the last one was done in 2004, so there's been a number of changes since that time. And there's been a lot of revisions. The committee researched 9 other districts, and most districts have instructional time between 40 and 50 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, and they alternate between science and social studies. The social studies in grades K through 2 is primarily thematic and interdisciplinary, and then at grades 3 through 5 it becomes to have more historic content and concepts. Strength include hands-on activities and co-curricular activities such as Colonial Day. All the units are grade level appropriate, and teachers like the pacing and flexibility of the topics. Some recommendations for improvement are to revise the current courses, to more effectively incorporate civics, current events, geography, and economics, and have more hands-on resources. And provide professional development to improve social studies instruction and continue to improve assessment. The next item is Michael Fackelman presented on the K through 12 music department program evaluation. So he spoke about first K through 5, and the K through 5 music program currently has 8 full-time staff members. All students receive general music instruction for 50 minutes per week, and performance ensembles are available for students in grades 3 through 5. The William Annan music program has 4 full-time staff members for band, chorus, and orchestra, and 1 half-time staff member shared with Ridge. Students in 6th grade have a music cycle class and can also participate in band, chorus, or orchestra. 6th and 7th grade students can elect to participate in band, chorus, or orchestra, and a music technology course is available as an 8th grade elective. At Ridge High School, there are 3 full-time staff members, 1 band, 1 chorus, 1 orchestra, and 1 half-time staff member. And several courses are offered, including concert band, winds ensemble, chamber orchestra, symphony orchestra, Ridge Chorale for girls in grades 9 and 10, concert choir, for boys 9 through 12 and girls 11 through 12, and a cappella choir, which is audition only. And there are also music theory and enjoyment of music courses, which satisfy the graduation requirement. All Ridge music courses meet 5 days a week, except for a cappella choir, which meets 1 night per week. So the music program's strengths include a highly qualified staff, a variety of courses, and good enrollment. There are some challenges with facilities and scheduling. We also briefly talked about the New Jersey school performance reports for 2016-17, which are now available. And I don't know, some of you may have seen, there was an article in the Star Ledger this weekend about how park data is being reported differently now. And if a school's park participation rate is less than 95%, all students not participating in excess of 5% are counted as failing to meet standards. So this change in park reporting affected our school district and also affected many other school districts in the state. And Dr. Heineman and Mr. Markarian are currently looking at district data, including MAP scores, as well as data from comparative districts. We got a brief update on accelerated Math 6 and algebra prerequisite. And Ms. Bowman reported students currently in the 5th grade telescope math program will be scheduled for accelerated Math 6, and other 5th grade students can qualify by meeting criteria having to do with the MAP test scores and an internal exam. There was a curriculum forum at Mount Prospect School on February 14th about world language and mathematics courses at William Annan, and there are 2 curriculum forums scheduled in April. On April 9th, Go Math at Liberty Corner, and April 11th, math testing at William Annan. There were a couple of questions about the computer science former computer science capstone for the STEAM Academy students. And Project Lead the Way no longer offers a capstone computer science course, but computer science students in the STEAM Academy will still be able to take AP research when they're seniors. And next year, AP Seminar, which is one of the AP capstone courses, will be offered at Ridge. It is in the English Language Arts Department, but a teacher has not yet been assigned. Academic Planning Night was the next item. This was held January 18th for current 8th graders and their parents. This year featured an introductory presentation for everyone in the Ridge Pack, followed by an open house model in 2 Ridge gyms. And Dr. Heineman noted that over 800 people attended the presentation in the pack this year. And then there were generally positive, there was definitely positive feedback, but some parents reported that there were long lines during the open house. And the plan for 2019 is to do the introductory presentation in the pack twice and have 2 shifts in the gym to alleviate this problem. And then the last item was information about an online financial literacy course to be offered starting in summer 2019. This new course will condense the 1 semester financial literacy course at Ridge into 6 weeks, and grading will be the same as the semester course. And as I said, this will not be offered until summer 2019, so for summer 2018, students will have the same opportunities that they have now. And then we're meeting next March, on March. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Byrne?
I have a couple comments. The only one that really, as I read them, was the annual comparisons. And I think it was, English language K2. And I see decline. I don't see improvement from 2013 to 2017. That's a concern on my part, that we don't show improvement. And what's even worse, the other reviews had no annual comparison. So I don't know whether the math program is doing better or worse. Social studies, there's no no evaluations to show improvement. Does that imply that it's getting worse? You don't want to talk about it? I don't know. So that's my major observation. I'd like to know the annual improvement. Are we doing a better job, or are we losing the kids? And I'm a little surprised the gap between the schools, elementary schools, continues. And that bothers me as well. So I'd like more information.
And I'm just going to go back to the first grade, the reading assessment, which I have some issues with. But, and I'm just wondering that, when my daughter was in first grade, but she's 18 now, I feel like the Common Core standards, it's not a broken record, but I feel like the standards that are pushed down into the lower grammar school are not appropriate for their age level. So when it almost was before, it wasn't even a prerequisite to read in first grade. You were learning how to read, but you didn't have to. And by like the end of second grade, everyone was like kind of on the same, that's what we were told. Everyone kind of caught up. They're all on their own pace. And I almost feel like we're forcing kids to read before they're actually ready. So with assessing and, it just seems like it's all like it's, and I'm not an expert. I'm just, putting it out there and how I see it. I know there's been pushback from other towns, not just ours, not just how I feel, but I know there was a woman from Summit talking about it to the State Board of Ed when we were in Atlantic City, and she was mentioning how, what are they going to do about the lower grades? The standards are just not appropriate for that age group. And we talk about stress all the time. We talk about the biggest thing you can do to stress kids out is make them do something they're not there yet for. And I'm not saying it's not our teachers, it's not our fault, I'm not like we have great teachers, they're trying their best, we're implementing something that was forced on us, but I'm not sure how far we need to go with it. If it's not really helping our children, or for the detriment. And it's just not just us, it's just the standards. And people asking questions about like the State Board honestly couldn't answer, which was a disappointment to me because they didn't come back with anything that made any sense to when you're on the ground trying to teach the kids. So I look at that and I can't, if they're lower level, but if they're a lower level because they're never going to be at that level, then what does it mean? Does it mean anything? You know what I'm saying? If the standards are just not appropriate, then how are we ever going to get them to the level? How are they ever going to look like they're doing well? That's just my concern, out there. It's not criticism of our staff or anything like that. It's just a rethinking of, is this the right way to go? I know it's mandated, but what else can we do? I don't know what else what the answer is, but when we look at it, I don't want us to say, oh, our kids are not doing well. It's not our kids, I don't think. It's not our teachers, it's the standards. I guess just, I don't know. Right? That's just.
Jump in there. When I was talking before, I mentioned the RTI program. I feel that I went to the presentation that at Oak Street that our supervisor, Mrs. Dancion Vitale, gave about the RTI program, and I knew about it because she presented at a board meeting, and I have a second grader, so I sort of heard about it from a parent's perspective. But I really liked the explanation she gave about targeting really specific skills that they're having trouble with. Because you can look at the state standards and you don't know what that means. And the state standards might not be appropriate. We don't know. But the tests they're using to see what exact skills the kids are struggling with, I feel, are not out. If the kid isn't recognizing the letter sounds or something, it's very concrete. They can work on with them. It's something they need to learn.
Right, but it's not a test.
No, that's not a statement.
Right.
But I feel like we're identifying what the specific skills or things that the kids need to work on and trying to help them with that. So that's a good thing, because I don't think you can just look at the state standards and say, oh, this first grader hasn't met the standards, so therefore it's automatically a problem. But you get a different type of evaluation and pinpoint specific thinking. I agree with what you're saying about
No, I mean, that's like two separate things.
Yeah, two separate
the
things.
RTI thing is
Right, but I think our teachers are not so fixated on the state standards as they are figuring out what kids
what's better
actually
for
help
the
with.
kids, which is great. I'm just, I don't want to look at something and
Yeah.
is not just a problem in our district.
No, that's what I'm
You
saying.
know, that it happens in other districts as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Advocacy committee?
Advocacy met on February 5th. We talked about some of the events that were happening in the month of February. And we confirmed that Dr. Bradley's presentation at Ridge that he gave about crazy stressed students was videotaped and it should be on the district website. You guys just mentioned the RTI presentation. That I know I was there too for that one, and that was also videotaped and should be available on the website. And as well as the February 14th transition world language and math options that was given on Prospect on February 14th. That was also videotaped, so all of those curricular related presentations should be available on the website. Ms. Woolridge passed along that on January 9th, the Municipal Alliance meeting, Caitlin Tuccio said that she would be speaking with the Ridge faculty about leaving at their faculty meeting February 7th. So that's passed, so hopefully it went well. A prescription drug drop-off is being scheduled for March 10th at the Burners Township Police Department. And the mental health resource fair is going to be held at the Bernards Township Library on March 22nd. Mercy Mercurian talked about the student stressor survey with our group as well, and Ms. McCune did a fabulous job of reviewing that program. We talked about Mr. Marcarian met with Executive Director Richard Hall from the Richard Hall Community Mental Health Center in Bridgewater, along with the county superintendents. He discussed a project he's working on collaboratively with others to create a visual model that can help develop a visual depiction of the overall health of students, the academic and mental needs of the students, similar to like the NJ tiered systems and supports where there's a triangle, like a visual model. And he's hoping to get input from the PTO presidents and his parents and the community when the project is further along. We talked about the policy 1511, the Board of Education website accessibility, and just explain to the PTO presidents what that will mean going forward in terms of being ADA and compliance. We talked about Student Devices Initiative, which Mrs. McKean also went over. And just to bring your attention to some of the upcoming events that are coming in the district, on February 28th, there will be a Washington, D.C. trip overview at WAMS. That's Wednesday at 9:15. On March 6th, there will be a 5th grade transition parent night at WAMS at 7 p.m. On March 7th, Effective School Solutions is doing a parent workshop that up until now had always been to be determined, but it looks like it's going to be children's suicide as the topic on this very valuable chart. That will be at 7 p.m. At the Ridge Pack. And on March 8th, there will be a transitioning to college with an IEP or 504 plan at Ridge Pack at 7 p.m. So a lot going on at Ridge Pack and Rams Pack. Then we are going to be meeting on March 5th. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any liaison? No? We're up to the ad hoc SEL committee.
Our committee met last Thursday, and I have yet to complete the minutes, so I'll be reporting out at the next meeting.
Thank you. We're up to public comment on non-agenda items. If anyone would like to comment, sign in and tell us your name.
James Vogel, 20 Ravine Place. I know that you guys have some major decisions when it comes to the budget, and I don't know how feasible it is to work this in, but I think, as I mentioned earlier this evening, it's extremely important that we get additional counselors in the elementary schools. There's been a seismic shift in how students can cope, their social, emotional health, how they even interact with each other. You know, I've been teaching for 25 years, as I mentioned earlier, and the drastic change in the home life of students, where students just don't go out and play anymore by themselves after school or with people on their street. What do? They're overscheduled. You know, Johnny has, you know, does homework from 3:30 to 4, and then he goes to soccer practice from 4 to 5, and then comes home for dinner, and then he goes to this practice and swim practice, and they're so overscheduled that they've lost touch with just being a kid. And having counselors in the elementary building would certainly help to eliminate a lot of the pressures that kids feel, because they don't really get to talk about it. Okay, one counselor for, you know, 590 students, just not cutting it. One counselor cannot possibly work with the number of students that need to be worked with who are in crisis, but just to be able to touch base with people. So I hope that you would seriously consider putting that in the budget. Secondly, to Mrs. Korn's point about students not really being ready because of tougher standards, I totally agree. The standards are tough even in 5th grade, and some students are not ready to learn. And I tell my parents that at back to school night, and I give them the whole spiel about the 10-year-old brain and how it's very concrete. And yet we teach 3 topics that are abstract, and they can't handle that, and they don't do well. And I just warn the parents that don't be surprised if your children come home with poorer grades. I said it's not a reflection of them, it's not a reflection of you, it's just they're not ready. And then they go off to 6th grade, and they go off and they shine, and they grow, and they mature, and so, you know, all's right in the world. But to Mrs. Korn's point, these standards are tough, and that does put undue stress on kids. And then the parents start to freak out. So it's, you know, that's something that I just wanted to mention, that totally agree with you. And then the last point that Mrs. Swerner made about conferences, just to give you a little bit of background, I brought this up, and I think that's why we were having these meetings. I'm concerned only with the respect that I have 95 students, and I'm able to fit all my conferences in 3.5 days, right before Teachers' Convention. And I have the freedom to schedule conferences outside of the quote-unquote conference time. I don't know if the teachers here in this district have that luxury. I just broke down some numbers. I had 39 openings for conferences during the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before Teachers' Convention. 36 of them were filled. As I noticed when I came to fall conferences, many of the sign-ups were blank as I walked up and down the halls going to and from my daughter's conferences. And I'm just wondering, when you have 4 days of half-day conferences, one of those days had an in-service thrown in there, you know, what do the teachers do with that time that they're not scheduled? Because I looked at these lists and I'm thinking, okay, you got 3 people signed up and they have all this excess time. Now, if you take a look at the surveys that were done with all the schools, one of the primary things that bothered teachers was that they felt pressure to have their kids do well in the park. Well, if you give them back 2.5 days, they're going to get that as teaching time. I think we should just eliminate spring conferences, to be quite honest with you, because when they had the fall and the spring all there, nobody was signing up for spring conferences. So I would, okay, thank you. I'd like to, you know, if you could just survey the teachers, just to see how many of those teachers did have a full conference schedule, because I have, you know, 95 kids, they only have, what, 23 to 25 in a class? I mean, heck, you can get that done in a day and a half. So, and if you want to use the schedule wisely, then have all the conferences, your 3 half days before Teachers' Convention, your 1 nighttime conference, you know, that Monday or Tuesday. I know Tuesday's typically a voting day. But, you know, that way teachers who have kids of, you know, 23 to 25, you can schedule everybody, and you have reserved time for those parents who can't make it, and they can show up during the nighttime conferences. Thank you.
So, John Coelho, 22 Pendant. So I'll be very brief. I'd just like to acknowledge, Superintendent Markarian's efforts and work and his board's tireless efforts at keeping our community, and the school systems at this prestigious level. I also want to acknowledge, and I've seen firsthand how well the coordination works with the police and law enforcement. I think that's excellent. That's good. We should keep doing that. My ask of you in totality, looking at the whole thing and listening to the budget, is whether it happens in closed session, the right thing to do, not showing your hand, is to ask for the things you really need to ensure the security of all our school institutions. Above and beyond what the budget exists, don't disclose your hand, but ask for them and go back to the township committee, because I think that's the right thing to do for this kind of town. But imagine if there was no constraints. What is it that you absolutely need to make sure these schools are secure, that the best they can be? And my advice to you, from my experience in general management, is listen very, very closely to those in the front line. Listen to your school resource officers. Listen to those who are working in the institutions, the counselors. They'll tell you what they need. And if it's incremental resource officers or aides, that's the decision you have to take, but ask for the incremental dollars for it. Thank you very much for what you do.
Good evening again, Rippy Carter, 58 Independence. I have 3 comments related to an elementary school level, and the other 3 comments are related to middle school and high school. I wanted to thank the Board of Ed for working closely with whomever at Mount Prospect to get an additional STEM Olympics mini unit added. There was an overwhelming response from the Mount Prospect parents, and it filled up very quickly, and immediately Ms. Linstra, along with the faculty and the management, as well as all of you, somehow came up with an extra session, and I wanted to say thank you on behalf of the parents there. We're very grateful for that. On an elementary school level, I'd like to ask the Board of Ed to consider expanding the Gifted and Talented program to include science and reading, writing, learning comprehension, language arts type functions. Lastly, I believe that we could really benefit from having a speech and debate type program at our elementary schools, starting in perhaps 4th or even at least 5th grade. Some of these students that we heard on TV after the Parkland incident were elementary schools, extremely well spoken, and doing a little bit of research on that, found that they have an amazing STEM and a speech and debate program. So I'd like to urge you to consider adding that to the elementary schools, all of them. For the middle schools and the high schools, I'd like you to consider a later start time for the middle school and the high school. Maybe you switch it with elementary schools, start looking at the busing issues, start looking at how you can somehow manage that in the coming years. Second to last, expanding the STEM program in middle school at WAMS. They have an excellent STEM program, but there's only 20 students that can take advantage of that. I'd like you to consider expanding that to include 6th and 7th grade programs as well. There's some great work being done by the faculty there, and I think that there are so many more students that could benefit from that. Moreover, last weekend, this past Saturday, there was an amazing speech and debate tournament here at WAMS, and it was fantastically run by the very few Basking Ridge faculty members that were participating, and I'd like you to consider setting aside funds, or at least allowing for fundraising or whatnot, to have jackets, blazers for the team members. I understand they have it in high school. At the Ridge High School forensics team, they have these blazers, and I'd like you to consider having those also for the middle school. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. We're now up to board forum.
So, just the one thing I have heard a little bit about continuing on was the conversation that we spent a little bit of time on the last sort of board forum, which was the student device initiative and the exploration of our fleet, how to distribute the fleet, would we try to do one-to-one, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of put it back out there in light of the report that we had from the Finance Committee. I think that the direction that I'm kind of feeling and feeling like it's the right move for us, at least for the 18-19 school year, was really what came out in the Finance Committee, having looked at a variety of options to try to expand our student devices, expand the number of Chromebooks in the district from a financial perspective, and from the many reasons outlined earlier this evening. I think that we're kind of in a status quo mode, and just to shed a little light on that, for the public, we're basically looking at a fleet of approximately 2,100 or so Chromebooks, 2,100 Chromebooks that have really been purchased for the students to use over the last few years. That's roughly the total that we're looking at in the district that were funded by the Board of Education. Obviously, we're thankful for many devices that were funded to supplement that by the PTO contributions, which are extremely generous. However, the board's commitment has numbered about 2,100 devices. And when we talk about the status quo, just maintaining that number of devices over time is obviously a significant financial obligation for the board. And again, for all the reasons and unknowns that we have currently that could extend beyond the 18-19 school year, I think that it is prudent to follow the course of action that the Finance Committee kind of came to, which was to just sort of plan on maintaining that fleet and not to get too far beyond that and overreach what we might be able to sustain in the long term. That being said, we are looking at the fact that we anticipate the fleet, if you will, of Chromebooks to largely make it through the 18-19 school year, probably becoming less supported, if you will, by the end of the 18-19 school year in June. So the one thing that I would ask the board to kind of contemplate a little bit, since we've had so much discussion about doing a variety of different things with the Chromebooks, is to kind of consider the possibility that there's the issue of the timing of exactly when replacement devices get purchased. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now. We want to get the most life out of the devices that eventually will be purchased to replace the fleet that is aging out. And so we're kind of looking at when will the newer model, if you will, come online. If you can purchase the newer models, theoretically they're going to be supported for more time, and maybe you can get a little bit more usable life out of them. So that's one issue that we're looking at. The timing of when that purchase gets made is relevant in my mind from the perspective if the board wanted to entertain the possibility of piloting different uses or approaches with the Chromebooks, there could be during the 18-19 school year to try some of that and bring all or some, a portion of the new fleet online as it's overlapping with a fleet that's going to be expiring towards the end of the school year. So there may be an opportunity there, and I just wanted to put that out there for the board to consider. It's not a decision that needs to be made tonight by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something that I wanted to put out there for the board's consideration over the next couple months as we think about next school year, as we think about our budget, as we think about the possibility of maybe trying some things that the the steering committee had brought forth with regard to student devices. It could be an opportunity to use the 18-19 school year to try some things, gather some data, and get a better sense of where the next step might take us in 1920 and beyond, at a time when we know more about what our long-term future expenses might be like. Hopefully, in the next 6 to 8 months, we'll learn a lot about some of those unknown possible financial obligations that could come up, and that would certainly inform the decision going forward on whether or not the district could sustain the finances necessary to do an expansion of student devices that goes beyond the status quo that we have right now. So it's something for your consideration. If you want to comment, obviously I'd be perfectly happy to take your notes down, but it's not something you need to decide tonight. I just want you to think about it.
I have a quick question. In terms of carts that we have in the district, if we are buying this new fleet, to just, whatever, are they going to be still usable, or are they going to be like Apple that changes their chargers every
No, we don't anticipate that to be the case. We firmly believe that we'll be able to reuse the carts that we have now as we replace devices that age out, yes. It is important to note, though, the subject of carts certainly comes up if we do expand the fleet in some way, depending on how you expand the fleet. If you're putting carts in classrooms, you need a cart to go with the Chromebooks. If you wanted to try letting students take them home, if you will, in a pure one-to-one scenario, you don't need to buy carts. So the carts are definitely an issue depending on how you decide to try to implement them.
I just want to make sure that they're usable.
Yes, we anticipate that we'll have no problem reusing the carts.
My question is the 2100 Chromebooks that they're going to not support, and that has nothing to do with them breaking, them not working anymore, Chromebooks. So what do they take? Do they give us money back? Can you trade them in? Or is there a way to get them to use? Can you use them even if they're not supported as well? Is there a way to use them?
Sure, right. So, I think that I have a desktop computer at my house that I still make work, that's probably 7, 8 years old, and you wouldn't want to have to try to use it for some things, but it works fine for other things, right? So maybe some of you can relate to that. But, I think that kind of is related to your question in the sense of, well, what could we do with those things, right? So what does it mean in June of 2019 if you have, 1,000 Chromebooks that have now been in service for 5 school years, right? Can you still use them going into the 6th school year? How well supported will they be? What does it mean if they're not supported and you can't update certain things? These are questions that we're really unable to answer. But we do have an IT director who is thinking about those things and who's also looking at what can I do with these things? Can I get any value out of something that's 5 years old, even if it's just to somehow recycle them for parts or something, so to try to get some value out of it.
It just seems like, it's something that you alter. It's never going to end.
It's never going to end. You're always going to have
a right to just stop supporting something that works because you can.
Right.
That's just.
I think you were asking for story a little bit, get some reaction. Others that probably have different opinions. I think elementary school, I want the kids to learn how to think and learn without the computer. And it's certainly necessary to give some orientation about what computers do and things, but I think the learning process in the elementary school, in my opinion, should not depend and should not use computers in any large numbers. I think the kids should know how to add 12 and 33 and get some kind of a number without using a Chromebook. Thinking and the same thing with all of the courses. Middle school gets a little bit more complicated, but many of the courses, again, what are you going to use the Chromebook in history and some of the sciences? Yes, the problems, you might need the Chromebook, but I'm not a big fan either of the middle school. But when we get to the high school, I think every student should have one. And I think because they'll probably use some of them in exams and things, they ought to be able to bring them home, do homework with them, become familiar with them, so when they take a test, they know how to use them and they're familiar with them. They're not shifting back and forth between a couple of different machines that have different keys and things. I have trouble with the laptop when I go away from the desktop, so I think if I'm going to use them on tests and things, I'd like to be able to bring them home. I think something that I haven't heard anything about is a breakdown of what courses would use them and how they would use them. Right now, the assumption is, I think in many of the presentations that I've heard or discussions, well, every course will use them. Well, I'd like to challenge that. I'd like to see a breakdown of what each course, particularly in the high school, but if you want them in the middle school, I'd like to see that too. What are you going to use them for, and how are they going to affect learning, and will they adversely affect people's ability to think of things? And then we can do a little bit better analysis. So I don't think enough information or thought has gone into this, how many machines we need.
Yeah, my question kind of goes off of what Mike just said, because I agree. When you look at the final column in the chart, for example, Ridge High School, it says we need 1,050 of them. Is that reflective of equipping every classroom with a full cart? Or is it reflective of the approximately 35 classrooms who say they will need and consistently use them? That. Okay. Because, I mean, that's a critical part of our decision. Want to buy Chromebooks to equip the classrooms that are going to use them when they need to use them. That wasn't really clear in this information. I don't know if this is working.
I just want to say thank you for giving us this detail that several of us have been looking for a while. I think one of the things it tells me anyway is that there's a big difference between 1,050 Chromebooks and 1,850 Chromebooks. Something that a lot of us have been wondering about. I hesitate incredibly to go along with Mr. Byrne, because if what we're going to use on a regular basis in 35 classrooms is a maximum of 1,050 Chromebooks, then purchasing to send home 1,850 for the purposes of homework and whatnot, when we know from our recent surveys that almost everyone has access to a device at home, and a lot of our students like their devices that they have at home better than the Chromebooks, if you're talking to your high schoolers. Why would we want to spend money on Chromebooks that we would send home with them, and then they'll set them aside while they work on their MacBook or whatever they like at home? So I appreciate the additional detail we've gotten this evening.
Straight table is very hard to
Let me just add something to that. You know, I just don't know also the practicality in terms of kids, every kid carrying
survey, except for a handful, everybody has a device that they like to use at home. And the difference between all of us and our kids, when someone mentioned, I don't know how to use the keyboard on this, I don't know the kids aren't like that. The kids adapt. They are so accustomed to the computer world because they've had it their entire lives. That doesn't bother them to use one thing at home and use something else at school. I think that's just something that bothers us because we're like, oh, I know how to use this and now you've given me something new and I can't figure it out. I don't think kids have that, so I would be more supportive of not giving every kid a Chromebook that they have to carry around all day and transfer to and from school.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. I was like the mean parent that didn't let my younger kids on technology much at all, and they still figured out how to use it right away. And they were not at any kind of disadvantage at school that they couldn't figure out how to use the technology. My only concern with like getting them enough access at the younger ages is like that they at some point learn how to keyboard, even though everything has touch screens now, that they actually can type well enough to like write, you know, an essay or do something on a computer at some point is a valid concern. So I think the rest of it they're going to figure out really easily when they do get access to it. So I don't know that starting at a really young age is necessary or optimal in general.
I've never held a Chromebook, so I'm going to put that on the agenda. I have to go handle one and see whether it's anything different than what I had at home. You could be right. I don't know. I'll let you know after I have it.
Just in terms of like going back to the surveys that we were looking at, it seemed like from all of the, or a lot of, majority of the teachers wanted more access to technology, right? So it's just, in my mind, it's just a question of how are we providing that access? Is it through their own personal device, like a BYOD policy, or the Chromebook? And the advantage I see over the Chromebook, and I think this was also reflected in some of the faculty surveys, was that it's a control issue, right? So if you're using your own device, if every kid wants to bring their own laptop or their own phone, that's fine, but then there's no control over that system, right? They have access to every one of their apps and just like unbridled, internet access. So the Chromebook, while not as functional and not as user-friendly by any stretch as Apple products or some of the Android products that they have at home or their laptops, desktops, tablets, it does provide a measure of control for the school district and the faculty so that when a teacher says, pull out your Chromebook or doing a problem set or I want you to look something up, they know that the kids are actually going to use their Chromebooks to do that because there's no other functionality whatsoever. So in my mind, that's kind of a good compromise between access to technology and good access, productive access, rather than distraction.
I agree with that, but I think that since this was including the classrooms that were going to use it the most, right? So they were the ones that would be asking the kids to use the technology. If they had the Chromebooks in the classroom where they were going to actually ask them to use it, then that's all they would need. In other classrooms where they're not going to be using technology, I think we should very much heavily encourage the phone tells or the hotels or not bringing their phone, or not bringing their devices because they don't need them. They're not going to be using them in the classroom. And if by chance, or like a one-off, I guess we have some kind of like extra devices they could use, or we have a computer lab or whatever, like a way that like we have the Chromebooks in these classrooms that are going to be, they need them and they're going to be using them at the high school. The most, it seems like it kind of solves that problem for me because and it helps with the, why buy everyone when they're in half them or like a third of them won't even be used. It seems like a waste of money, but if we have them where they're going to be using them, and then it would still help us with the issue with kids bringing them. Okay.
I think a lot of us were, looking for the answer of how much are they using in particular classrooms, and I think we're getting closer to having an understanding of that. I think this isn't going to be an overnight process of figuring it out. I think you know, if we want to pursue having some policy or whatever about cell phone usage, we have to do it in such a way that is flexible enough that teachers have some options. If there is a class that really needs to do something, or they need to look something up or do something on a device and they can't get it before class because they're not one of the ones that has a lot of time, and we want to give the teachers the flexibility of telling the kids, you know, on this day, go out your phone to do whatever, you know, that's fine, but it's, you know, not like a regular thing. I think there's a big difference. So I think we just have to be careful that we're flexible when we go into this, and, you know, like, see how it goes and adapt.
Is it possible, in addition, we know that there's that number of teachers who say, if I had them, I would definitely use them. What if you've got one or two extra cards for it? So those classrooms that don't say they'll use them on a regular basis, and it's a sign-up basis. So you know you've got a project coming up, you know you don't have them in your classroom, and you don't have to, say to the kids, bring your devices in. You know you can sign out and you bring the card. So it's kind of how it used to be done at the elementary level before we had all of that. You signed up for when you needed to do a project in your classroom.
No, I agree with that. I was just saying that, like, it is still in the teachers the flexibility that if for some reason someone else had already signed up the cards, then you really need, they wanted to be able to do something, they would have that option.
I just have a question for Mr. Markarian. Something that came up in our SEL committee this past week was about the ability for students to message one another through Google. I can't speak to it, so I wonder if you could make a little bit of clarification as to what that means in terms of what they have access to, the information.
Sure, yeah. So I'm not going to claim to be an expert on Google messaging, but I know that I know that there are applications in Google, like Mr. Syed's talking about Google Hangouts. There are things within the Google platform that kids can't communicate with each other. Another aspect is even in shared docs, kids working on shared docs can be commenting back and forth on a shared doc. They can use the shared doc as a way of communicating to one another. So I do think that it's not fair to say that if you give every kid a Chromebook, they have no way of communicating with each other, similar to how they might have a way of communicating using their cell phones, texting back and forth. So yes, I mean, there are going to be ways that kids could communicate and or chat through applications available on a Chromebook. Not as convenient probably as texting, but.
I just wanted to say, I would like to have a chance to review the information that we received and, have a chance to address it maybe next time.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something that Ms. Swerner asked about to be a little clearer when you were asking about the counts for the cards, okay? From a financial perspective, there's no way that we could afford to put as many cards in every classroom that the staff were asking for without it more than exceeding the number of devices. So those numbers that I gave you are on a 2-to-1 basis. In other words, they'd like to have 70 cards. The middle school would like to have 52 cards. Obviously, there is no way that's going to happen. So I looked at it from the perspective of, well, if we went strictly with a cart-based model, and we were next door to one another, we would be sharing that one cart between 2 rooms. So I know you're thinking about that. There was no way that I was going to put 70 carts on there at the high school. 70 times 30, you're at 2,100 devices just for the high school. At Annan, 52 times 30, you're over 1,500 devices. So you're already beyond 1-to-1. So I just want to be really clear on that because I was thinking about your question as we were talking. And so I took the numbers that the staff gave me when I asked them for, you had a cart in every room, how many rooms would it be? And I cut it in half, okay? So they really were asking for 70 rooms with a cart at Ridge. And at Annan, they were in the 50s. So I said, well, maybe a model that could be approachable and affordable would be 26 at Annan, half sharing between 2 classrooms, and at Ridge, 35 sharing between classrooms. Okay, so I really want to clarify that. I apologize that wasn't clear before.
That model can be modified, because if I remember correctly from our last discussion, at Ridge particularly, there were certain curricular areas that weren't conducive to using a Chromebook. So maybe in the curricular areas where they could really use the Chromebook every day, it could be viable because another curricular area only uses them rarely.
Right, so when we went to the room counts, we did discount rooms that wouldn't use them at all. So those were pulled out of the mix. So when they came to me, actually the high school's number was 69. I just rounded it to 70, make it easy to cut in half. The middle school was in the mid-50s, so I went with 26. But obviously, you know, the schools and the teachers are going to make the best use of the resources that they have, right? So actual implementation, is it going to mean that, you know, Mrs. McEwen and I are alternating a cart every day because we have a room next door to one another and we both like to use Chromebooks sometimes? Probably not. It might be, I have them for 4 days, she has them for 2, you know, I mean, who knows? But in terms of an available resource and from a budgetary perspective, after we had the finance committee meeting that we had, looking at long-term sustainability, it didn't make any sense to throw out a cart in every single room where they thought that they'd be using them fairly regularly. And if you look at the survey from asking the staff, you had roughly a third of people saying that they would rarely or maybe once a week use the devices. So it's kind of like if you look at the floor plan of the Ridge High School building, you see about a third of the rooms are not highlighted as rooms that would be getting used, which correlates to, you know, somebody like maybe the Woods teacher that says, I'm not using computers in my room. So that's kind of why it seems to play out that way. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. And the diagram that I'm referring to was going back to one of the Technology Steering Committee's presentations from last year. It shows the highlighted rooms. You might remember the purple highlights. So, but as far as a number, you know, I set it up on a 2 classrooms per 1 cart basis. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about that.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? We'll obviously continue this discussion.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to report for them?
I do. Mr. Milligan talked earlier about the Ridge ice hockey team winning the Skyline Championship. So I just have to put a plug in for our exceptional Ridge fencing program. Last Wednesday night, I was able to attend the New Jersey State Fencing Championships. And for the first time ever, both our boys and girls teams were competing. First time ever for the girls team at States. And the results were great. Our girls fencing team received the state bronze medal. Our boys fencing team received the state silver medal. And this weekend at the individual squad championships, I have been told the girls épée squad received state silver. And on the boys' side, both our saber squad and our foil squad got the gold medal, which means they were the best squads in the state. So, let's see those